Well, hey there, everybody. This is Benjamin Morris, comic book artist, and wanted to do a quick stream. I've been sharing a lot of content from We Are Scarlet Twilight because the campaign is live now on zoop.gg. So if you haven't checked it out yet, I hope you will. We've got a lot of cool stuff there, single issues, the conclusion of the story, number 4, lots of variant covers, and of course, a hardcover collection that gives you the whole series and a lot of extras that sketches, story things that I think you really like. But today I was going to go through a short preview of issue 4, some pages we've already released, and give you a little bit of creative background on them and tease some of the cool things that are coming up at the end of the issue, which I think, again, you're really going to like. I think the way that it turned out at the end was a good resolution, and I'm so excited to hear what people think of it when it gets out there. But that's a little bit off in terms of everyone getting to read it, although the art and letters are done. The campaign's live for 2 more weeks, so let's just, for now, go through issue 4 a little bit, and hopefully you'll see some things you like and check out the campaign. Anyway, this is a zoom in of our cover for issue 4. This is the main cover. Wanted to have kind of an action piece that also, showed a few of the elements that are going to come in, some of our new villains. The fact that, in issue 3, a big theme was patriotism, and we're kind of learning who Captain Lancet really is. And this is a big spoiler if you haven't read or listened to the other videos about this. Captain Lancet is, in fact, Vlad the Impaler from, the historical basis of Dracula. But we also kind of realize that he is, in fact, a real hero and a real American hero. He has gone through the years. He never really was Dracula in this version of the tale, but he ended up as going pretty far back American and came to believe in this country and freedom and all that stuff in a way that I think really harkens back to what you see in the Golden Age comics that We Are Scarlet Twilight is based on. So just a little better look there as we go through the first 7 or 8 pages of this. And I'll give you a little bit of background on some of the art process, some of the stuff that went into the story, and kind of tease some of the things coming up. So here's our cover, and go right to page 1. At the end of issue 3, Captain Lancet's revealed he's going to go back after their failed attack on Scarlet Twilight alone. His clone sidekicks that were clones of his driver from the 1930s gave him one last ride down the Hudson River, rather, to sneak into the city. But he's decided that he's pretty much got to go alone to pull off whatever his plan is, which at this point we don't know, and we'll see in the course of issue 4 here. So he's just kind of saying goodbye, not revealing his plan. You can see the Scarlet Twilight Citadel here in the background, looms over the city. So that's where he's headed. And which is what he says here up top. There's only one place to go, and I'd best be on my way. So he's heading to this fortress all alone, and not necessarily being that, quiet about it. We cut back to the throne room, which he was trying to get to in the previous issue's attack. We see Madame Satanica here, the head of the Scarlet Twilight cult, with some kind of ceremony, and we'll learn that it's this guy is being inducted. She has her main henchmen, the ones that run each of the continents of the world for her, in kind of a mafia-like organization or vampires called the Scarlet Monarchs. Captain Lancet did take one of them out in issue 3, and this is kind of the guy that's replacing him, and we'll learn a little bit more about him as the scene unfolds. But here I just wanted to show kind of Satanica in all her glory. She's got all her people around here. They're surviving members of this group that was kind of the sort of Crimson Scarlet Guard. And also that she's got all these flags up here of nations she's conquered: France, America, Mexico, Britain. This is Canada. As you might know from reading the first few issues of Scarlet Twilight, the world sort of stopped in 1938 in this version of the story when they took over, and so Canada still had this flag and not the flag that they introduced several years later that we're more familiar with. So she's explaining, this guy we'll sort of reveal, was definitely next in line, was waiting for a spot. You kind of get that he's sort of definitely the stud of Scarlet Twilight. He's the best fighter. And he's been waiting for a while after he emerged to get his chance to move up the ranks, and finally a spot has opened up. So she's explaining that. He's finally getting the crown that he felt he always deserved, and is not being particularly shy about where he thinks his place in this organization is. She likes him, you can tell, but she's trying to keep him in line. She's a very egotistical villainess, and while I didn't get a lot of opportunities because of the type, sort of villain she is, to give her a lot of action scenes, I did try and take whatever opportunities I could to show that she was pretty arrogant, that she was very concerned with being on top of the pecking order, very concerned with attention and things like that. So hopefully I was able to get a little of that across in the dialogue. This seems a lot of fun to draw. It was a complicated scene. I needed to introduce a lot of different elements. This character, I needed a pretty good look at him. I needed to describe the situation. I actually like drawing crowd scenes, believe it or not. And this was a fun chance to do that. You may notice that some of these Scarlet guys have their ears cut out of their masks and some don't. That's generally in the story. Some of them just can't hear that well, and they had to cut the ears out. Logistically, there are just some angles where a head does not look right with no defining features aside from the ear. And as it just so happened, those were the guys that couldn't hear well. So where I really needed a ear to describe the form, you generally see an ear. So this guy gets his crown. He's ready to go. He's having his ceremony. And she reveals, hey, I've just heard we have spotters in the city. Captain Lancet's on his way. He's just walking down the street all by himself. We established that he's the oldest and most powerful vampire in the world. And he's going to get his chance to show if he's the badass he pretends to be, this guy. He boasts. He's like, I'll bring him here. I'll bring you his heart. Everybody's pretty excited about going into battle behind this dude. And that's the end of our kind of setup scene there. We cut to Captain Lancet walking through parts of Manhattan on his way to Scarlet Twilight's headquarters, which in my mind is somewhere in Midtown, probably around where Rockefeller Center is, that sort of area. So he's walking through the city here, and we kind of see that parts of the city that after the vampires kind of cleared out humanity, parts of the city they didn't care about, they just left to go to see it, and it looks like it just kind of fell apart starting in the early 40s. So we see some tracks here. There were trolley car tracks, wreckage, old cars, things like that. And he's just kind of walking down this deserted city. We see there's some leaves on the ground, so there's trees coming in from somewhere. I think I read somewhere that if all the pumps turned off in Manhattan, you'd have vegetation taking over and some flooding occurring in like weeks, not years or anything like that. It would be like I Am Legend in a pretty short amount of time, which I always stuck with me because I thought it was pretty interesting. So we have leaves somewhere. We don't have them here, and that's where these all blow on. There's trees somewhere, and that's where these leaves all come from. But for now, he's just walking there by himself. And we do kind of pay off something I've been teasing in the title pages from other parts of other issues of Scarlet Twilight. He's commenting on this sort of for the viewer to ascertain, but explaining that, boy, if they didn't care about a street, they just let it fall apart. It wasn't their deal. I did get to pay off a few pages in the other issues. I made fake advertisements for something called Second Avenue Egg Cream. And I've hinted a few times in the story this was his favorite place to get drinks. And also that the egg cream had some proteins in it, this particular one especially, that were almost as good as blood. And he reveals kind of in a throwaway sequence in 3 that he didn't really, at this point in his life as a vampire, he doesn't really need to drink blood that often or really at all. And there's plenty of substitutes, and this was one of them. But he's kind of sad to see his favorite shop having fallen apart here. So we kind of have a sad, reflective moment, I think, before battle, which of course I think you can guess. I don't imagine I'm spoiling too much by telling you the 4 is going to be mostly a big battle. So he's sitting here looking at it, saying, "Boy, it was too much to hope, I guess, that any of my favorite haunts had survived." And as he's kind of having this quiet, sad moment, chill breeze comes by and blows some leaves past him as he's looking through these broken windows. And it starts snowing. And pretty quickly, it becomes a blizzard. So he's looking up and around the city, and he's remembering back in issue 1, and if you've read issue 1, you might remember that there was a huge blizzard came out of nowhere in early November or mid-November. And that was kind of a precursor to everything that set the story in motion. Madame Satanica, who he had been tracking, was sacrificing people. He didn't know who she was, but he found out that night. They finally sacrificed a princess, and the royal blood drew this demon here who put Captain Lancet out for over a century and put Madame Satanica in charge of the world. So once there, while Captain Lancet was asleep, there was a lot of bad things happened. She turned her followers into vampires. They took over the world. They keep humanity somewhere kind of as food supply as much as anything. We don't really see that. I didn't know if that was the kind of imagery I really wanted to include in the story, but given the tone of it, but it's mentioned, so you kind of know what's going on a little bit, or it's addressed. So he's saying, well, maybe it's a good omen for me. This all was started in a snowy day. Maybe I'll figure out some way to end it in the same type of day. So that takes us to, he turns a corner. He's feeling a little bit optimistic. And we have kind of a splash page here where he's marching right up to Scarlet Twilight. They've left it completely undefended. Not that they need to have much of a defense, given that they're in charge of everything. And it gives me a chance to just do a dramatic setup page to, showing this giant structure in front of him. It's sort of a foreboding image, one man against the world type of a setup here. And it makes him look small, I hope, and that his challenge is going to be pretty big. And so that's kind of what I was trying to get across there, get a little bit of drama while reinforcing what Captain Lancet's going to be up to here. And this is the last page I think I'm going to show today. So we just kind of see him come into the lobby here. If you remember in issue 2, he and his sidekicks kind of blew the doors off to get in, thinking it would be pretty heavily defended. So what we're seeing here is the rubble has not been cleaned up. He's just coming in the same door he did the day before. He's not trying to be quiet. He kind of wants him to know that he's coming. And then again, this was supposed to be a quiet scene. That's a precursor to the very, very loud, comparatively, scenes we're going to see in just a few pages. So we see the wind blowing with him. I kind of wanted to use a lot of sound effects to give us a bit of a sense of this is a quiet moment. You're going to notice things like, the breeze, the snow blowing in, things like that. So he's looking around, trying to figure out how to get back up there best. We see that it's cold enough. You can see his breath. The elevator dings. They've sent it down for him, or it just happens to be there. In my mind, they've sent it down for him. He looks over, and I can see the breath trailing there, that the sound has drawn his attention. So you probably figure out that he is on his way up to confront the bad guys. I think that's where I'm going to leave it for today. I hope you'll check out our campaign, which is live on Zoop now. We're doing really great, closing in on 300 backers, which I'm really excited about. I want as many people to check out this book as possible. I think you're going to really like it. As you can see from this image, we're going to have the hardcover collection with a ton of extras, including one I'm working on right now. Some images that we'll probably use as a wallpaper, which is one of our stretch goals. Trying out some new things here in terms of style that I think we're going to introduce into the sequel to Scarlet Twilight. I really wanted to bring a lot of the Golden Age elements into this story. And I think I did a pretty good job, as much as I could, while still serving the interest of We Are Scarlet Twilight as a story. But there are points where I really wished I could do things that resembled the Golden Age comics a bit more than I did. So I'm going to try and structure this next story in ways where I can still get the amount of detail I had in the art, but do it in different doses. And I'm also hoping that we can really get across, a little bit of the pacing and things like that we saw in a more standard month-to-month comic, whether that, and that includes modern comics or sort of 80s comics as well. But something that's just a little more traditional and not necessarily a one-off kind of movie scale story. So that's what you're seeing there. And again, I hope you will check out the campaign. Like I said, we're doing great. Have a lot of interesting stuff here. You can get deluxe editions, you can get variant covers. There's a few black and white prints we're going to make of my art. I'm a digital artist, but you can get a one-of-a-kind thing that we're going to print up, and with a certificate of authenticity that you'll have. So it's kind of an original art-like experience, we hope. So again, if you're a big fan of Flash Gordon, of the Justice Society, of old school Batman, of Batman the Animated Series, I hope you give this one a shot. I think you're really going to like it. So I'm going to leave you again with the trailer for Scarlet Twilight 4, and thanks for tuning in.